Sir, before you stop me, what law did you think I broke?
Don't play games. I know a stolen car when I see one.
That's not how probable cause works.
Keep talking and you're going to make this a lot worse. Give me your ID.
This stop has no cause and no consent. I need your badge number because you're in big trouble.
For nearly 15 years, the Honorable Elijah Rowan Calder protected the Constitution with an iron spine and an unmatched legal mind. His rulings reshaped civil rights law and held abusive officers accountable nationwide. But the rookie who pulled him over in that quiet gated neighborhood didn't see a federal official. He saw a black man in a luxury car. 20 minutes later, that rookie wouldn't just lose control of the stop, he would lose his badge, his freedom, and his future. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. Judge Elijah Rowan Calder was born in San Francisco in 1973. His mother had been a civil rights attorney. His father had been a school principal. Education was not a luxury in the Calder household. It was a foundation. By the time Elijah was 12, he understood that power without restraint was tyranny. By the time he was 18, he had committed himself to becoming someone who would stand between the powerful and those they harmed. He graduated from Berkeley in 1995. He attended Stanford Law School on full scholarship. He clerked for a federal judge known for constitutional rigor. He spent 7 years as a civil rights prosecutor. Then he moved into private practice, where he took cases no other firm would touch. Cases involving police misconduct, cases involving abuse of authority, cases that required understanding both the law and the system that often ignored it. At 48 years old, he had been appointed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. At 51, he had authored 94 published opinions. 43 of those opinions had addressed police conduct and constitutional protections. His rulings had set precedent. His decisions had been cited in courtrooms across the country. His legal reasoning had become the foundation for how federal courts evaluated unlawful stops. He lived alone in a gated community in the Oakland Hills. The neighborhood was quiet. The homes were substantial. The residents were professionals, doctors, lawyers, executives. The security was designed to ensure peace. Except, peace can be disrupted by someone who does not understand what they are disrupting.
The Axon Bodycam activates with a metallic click. The harsh midday sun floods the lens. Glare washes across the frame in harsh whites and deep shadows. The camera tilts downward, catching expensive shoes on asphalt. This is the moment that would be watched millions of times. This is the moment that would reshape federal policy. At this precise instant, the officer holding the camera has no idea what is about to unfold. The gated community is exactly what it appears to be. Stone pillars at the entrance, iron gates that close automatically, a security booth where residents must be verified, manicured landscaping featuring native California plants, quiet streets designed for the kind of peace that money can purchase. No chaos, no crime, no commotion, just suburban silence interrupted by a patrol car that should not have been there. Judge Calder stands beside a pristine blue Mercedes-Benz. The vehicle is 4 years old. It is paid for. It is registered in his name. His posture is calm. His hands are visible at his sides. He wears a sweatshirt and jeans. Nothing aggressive, nothing threatening, nothing that should trigger suspicion. He is simply a man standing beside his own vehicle in his own neighborhood on his own property, waiting for what he believes will be a routine moment. The date is July 16th. The time is 2:23 p.m. The temperature is 97 degrees. The sky is clear. The conditions are normal. Nothing about this afternoon suggests what is about to happen. Officer Derek Paulson was born in 1998. He was 26 years old. He had been on the police force for exactly 3 years and 2 months. In those 3 years, he had attended the academy,
completed his probation, and begun building what he believed would be a career in law enforcement. He was not thoughtful, he was not reflective, he was the type of officer who acted on instinct and called it experience. Paulson's patrol car had entered the gated community without authorization. He had not been called, no crime had been reported, no resident had contacted the police. He was conducting a routine patrol, which meant he was driving through neighborhoods looking for reasons to stop people. He had spotted the blue Mercedes-Benz and made a decision. The decision was not based on anything he observed. It was not based on a traffic violation. It was not based on anything other than the color of the man standing beside the vehicle and the fact that the vehicle was expensive. Paulson stepped out of his patrol car. His hand gripped his firearm holster. His posture radiated presumption of guilt. He approached with the confidence of someone who believed the badge granted him authority before it granted him responsibility.
"License," Paulson said. His voice was sharp. "Now, I know a stolen car when I see one." The accusation came without any observation to support it, without any traffic violation, without any criminal report, without any basis in law. Judge Calder's response was immediate and measured. His voice remained level despite the aggression being directed at him. "Officer, what crime did you witness before initiating this stop? What specific traffic violation did you observe that prompted you to approach this vehicle?" The question was not argumentative. It was legal. It was fundamental. It was the question that every person stopped by police should be able to ask. It was the question that Judge Calder had built his career defending the answer to. "Don't get smart with me," Paulson said. His tone had shifted from simple aggression to something more hostile. "I'm asking you to produce your identification, now." "I understand you're requesting identification," Judge Calder said. His voice remained steady. "But before I provide it, I need to understand the legal basis for this stop. You have not articulated any criminal observation. You have not cited any reported violation. You have not stated any articulable suspicion. Under the Fourth Amendment, a lawful stop requires at least reasonable suspicion of a crime. What suspicion do you have?" Paulson's face reddened. The Bodycam captured the exact moment his frustration transformed into anger. To him, calmness was defiance. Precision was insubordination. A man who knew the law better than he did was a threat that had to be eliminated. "Out of the car," Paulson commanded. The order was loud. It was unnecessary. It was designed to establish control. Judge Calder did not move toward the vehicle. He was not in the vehicle. He was standing beside it. The distinction was legal, and it was important, and it was about to be irrelevant. Paulson lunged forward. His movement was sharp and deliberate. His intention was clear. He was not going to be questioned. He was not going to be reminded of constitutional law. He was going to impose his will through force. His hand reached for Judge Calder's arm. The Bodycam shook violently as Paulson pulled the judge toward the pavement. The video frame tilted at an acute angle. The ground rushed upward in the lens. The asphalt filled the frame. Judge Calder's body moved downward against gravity and against the force being applied to him. His hands were forced behind his back. Paulson's grip was tight and unnecessarily forceful. The officer's knee, visible at the edge of the frame, pressed into the judge's spine. The weight was applied with pressure designed to inflict pain and ensure compliance. "Stop resisting," Paulson shouted, but there was no resisting. The footage would later show a man being driven to the ground without any counterforce. The footage would show compliance being punished. The footage would show a crime being committed by an officer who did not understand he was filming evidence of his own violation. While pinned against the pavement, Judge Calder spoke. His voice remained steady despite the weight pressing into his back and the pain radiating through his body. "For the record, this stop lacks any legal basis whatsoever, and under 18 U.S. Code Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law, you are committing a federal felony right now. You are recording yourself committing this felony."
He did not raise his voice. He did not struggle. He did not fight back. He simply stated the law. The actual law, the precise statute that applied to what was happening at that exact moment. The law that Paulson was violating even as he was recording himself violating it. The body cam captured every word. The timestamp was embedded. The evidence was permanent and undeniable. Paulson applied handcuffs. The metal clicked as the mechanism tightened. The pressure was excessive and unnecessary. A bruise would form where the metal bit into skin. It would be photographed 6 hours later. It would be presented as evidence. Officer Paulson walked Judge Calder back toward the patrol car. The judge did not resist. He did not plead. He did not argue or justify or explain. He simply complied and observed. His silence was not fear. It was not resignation. It was strategy. It was the strategy of a man who understood that every moment was being recorded and that the truth was more powerful than anything he could say. Inside the cruiser, Paulson believed he had made a major arrest. He believed he was bringing in a criminal. He believed he had done his job correctly. He believed the badge protected him from consequences. He radioed it in, his voice carrying across the frequency that connects an entire police department. "Dispatch, I have a suspect in custody," Paulson said. His tone carried confidence. "Likely stolen vehicle, resisting arrest, requesting immediate processing." The words were spoken into a system that recorded everything. No theft report existed anywhere in the system. No call had come in about a stolen blue Mercedes-Benz in this neighborhood. No victim had reported the crime. No dispatch center had received notice of a stolen vehicle. The accusation was fabrication. The charge was false. The arrest was unlawful. But the words were spoken. The lie was broadcast to the entire department. And in a government building 3 miles away, someone was listening. Someone was recording. Someone was documenting the lie. Judge Calder stared at the body cam mounted on Paulson's chest. He was fully aware it was recording. He understood that everything that happened next would be preserved in digital form, immutable and permanent. He understood that the truth was being documented, and that the truth was a powerful thing that could reshape entire systems. The drive to the station took 8 minutes. In those 8 minutes, Paulson checked his mirrors several times. He seemed pleased with himself. He seemed confident. He seemed certain that he had done the right thing. He had no idea that his career was ending. Officer Paulson walked Judge Calder into the police station at 2:47 p.m. He escorted him through the lobby. The ambient noise, the chatter of officers, the movement of people, the background hum of a functioning police department stopped almost immediately. The station did not go silent all at once. It deflated. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Eyes moved. Recognition spread across the room like a wave. A captain named Michael Torres stepped forward. His face showed something between confusion and realization. He had been in the department for 22 years. He had supervised Paulson for 8 months. He knew who Judge Calder was.
"Rookie," Torres said, his voice carefully controlled. "Tell me you didn't just put cuffs on Judge Calder." Paulson's grip on the judge's arm tightened. His breathing changed immediately. His throat constricted. His certainty began to crack. The reality was beginning to penetrate the confidence he had felt moments before. "I pulled him over for a stolen vehicle," Paulson said, but as he said it, his voice carried doubt. He was beginning to understand, or he was beginning to hope he was wrong, but he was not wrong. He had arrested a federal judge. He had assaulted a federal judge. He had done it on camera. Judge Calder looked at Captain Torres directly. His composure had not changed. His voice remained steady. "Captain, I expect you to initiate an immediate internal affairs notification. This officer conducted an unlawful stop without probable cause, without reasonable suspicion, and without any criminal observation. He used force without legal necessity. He made false statements on the radio. He fabricated a crime that did not occur." Torres nodded. His posture had shifted completely.
He was no longer addressing a suspect. He was no longer treating this as a routine arrest. He was addressing a federal judge who had just been assaulted by one of his officers in the middle of his police station. "Remove the handcuffs," Torres ordered. Paulson's hands moved. His fingers fumbled with the keys. He was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had done. The handcuffs clicked free. Judge Calder's wrists were examined. The bruising from the cuffs was already visible. The skin was red where the metal had pressed into flesh. The bruising from being slammed to the pavement would appear within hours. It would be photographed. It would be documented. All of it was evidence. Internal Affairs received the footage within the hour. Sergeant Maria Lopez, who had been in IA for 8 years and had sustained complaints against 19 officers, reviewed it without commentary. She played it once. She played it again. She paused on specific moments that revealed the truth. The first pause came at the moment Paulson approached the vehicle. There was no probable cause visible on the footage. There was no observation of a crime. There was no traffic violation. There was only a black man in an expensive car. Nothing more, nothing less. The second pause came at the moment of physical contact. Paulson's claim of resisting was contradicted by the body cam itself. Judge Calder's arms were at his sides. His posture was compliant. His body was not moving in any direction other than the direction Paulson was forcing it. There was no resisting. The footage could not be clearer. The third pause came at the radio transmission. Paulson's statement, "likely stolen vehicle, resisting arrest," was objectively false, not subjectively debatable, not open to interpretation, false. The car was not stolen, the judge was not resisting, the claims were fabrications. Sergeant Lopez compiled her findings without repetition. She documented what the footage showed in the first instance. She documented what the radio transmission claimed. She documented the contradiction. She documented the crime. She sent it to the district attorney's office with a single notation: federal charges recommended. Officer Derek Paulson was suspended that day. His badge was surrendered. His service weapon was secured. He was placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. He was informed of his rights. He was informed of the charges he would face. The irony of a police officer being informed of his rights by other police officers seemed to pass everyone by. Or perhaps the irony was intentional. Perhaps it was meant to teach him something. He was arrested the following morning. The charges were federal. Aggravated assault under color of law, 10 years maximum. False imprisonment, 15 years maximum. Falsification of official documents, 5 years maximum. Civil rights violations against a federal judge, 10 years maximum. The charges were serious because the violation was serious. The trial lasted 1 week. The prosecutor's case was simple because the evidence was overwhelming. They played the body cam in its entirety to the jury. 12 citizens watched Officer Paulson approach the vehicle without basis. They watched him claim suspicion without articulation. They watched him escalate without justification. They watched him apply force without necessity. They watched him fabricate a crime that did not exist. They watched him record himself doing all of it. Paulson's defense offered no coherent strategy. His attorney argued that Paulson was responding to a call about a stolen vehicle. There was no call in the dispatch records. His attorney argued that Judge Calder had resisted. The body cam showed no resistance. His attorney argued that the car could have been stolen. No report of theft existed anywhere in any system. The jury deliberated for 27 minutes. They did not need to watch the video again. They had seen what they needed to see. The verdict was unanimous on all counts: guilty, guilty, guilty. The judge who presided over sentencing was Judge Patricia Chen, a woman with 30 years of judicial experience. She looked at Paulson and delivered the sentence that would reshape federal policy on police accountability. 25 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility, no early release, no discretionary sentencing reduction. Paulson collapsed in his chair. His mother wept in the gallery. His future was erased. His career was over. His freedom was taken.
The Bodycam footage went viral. It was shared millions of times. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed over 50 million times. News outlets covered it. Legal scholars analyzed it. The world did not watch a judge get abused. They watched a system expose itself through the very technology designed to protect it. The Department of Justice opened a comprehensive investigation into Officer Paulson's police department. They examined every stop he had conducted in his 3 years on the force. They found a pattern. 73 stops over 3 years. 49 of them involved black drivers. 32 of those 49 had resulted in arrests for minor offenses that prosecutors later dropped or declined to charge. The pattern was not ambiguous. The bias was documented. The department was placed under federal oversight. Mandatory training was implemented. Body cameras became mandatory and non-discretionary for all officers. Traffic stops became subject to immediate supervisory review. The system changed not because anyone wanted change for its own sake. The system changed because the truth could not be denied and the consequences could not be avoided. The legislation that followed bore Judge Calder's name. The Vance Law, named after the judge who had been stopped, mandated immediate decertification for any law enforcement officer convicted of falsifying reports tied to racial profiling. The law extended nationwide. It became federal standard. It became the mechanism by which corrupt officers were removed from the system permanently. Judge Calder returned to his chambers weeks after the verdict. He did not speak publicly about his experience. He did not grant interviews. He did not write op-eds or commentary. He simply returned to work. He continued ruling. He continued holding power accountable. He continued being the judge that criminals feared and constitutional rights depended on.
The world learned a lesson from Judge Calder's experience. Accountability exists because cameras are rolling. Truth survives because documentation is preserved. The badge does not protect against the law. The uniform does not exempt anyone from the Constitution. Officer Derek Paulson is currently in federal prison, serving his 25-year sentence without possibility of parole. He will be released at age 51 if he completes his full sentence. His career is over. His freedom is constrained. His future is defined by the moment he decided that a black man in a luxury car was suspicious enough to arrest. Judge Elijah Rowan Calder continued his work on the bench. His decisions continued to reshape civil rights law. His opinions continued to hold power accountable. His life continued to exemplify the very principles he defended in his courtroom. If this story shocked you, remember, accountability only exists because those cameras were rolling, because the law was stated precisely, because the truth was preserved in digital form where it cannot be erased or rewritten. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be seen, hit that like and subscribe button, because the fight for accountability never ends, and these stories prove that it matters.
What is up, man? What are you doing out here?
Since when standing in your driveway requires questioning?
Don't ask questions, buddy. Hands where I can see them.
You need to slow down, my man.
Don't tell me what to do. You're detained.
Since I'm detained, I'm Sergeant Darnell Cross.
For nearly 2 decades, Sergeant Darnell Cross served as the backbone of his department, the steady presence rookies relied on, the mentor captains trusted, and the officer who never hesitated to walk toward danger when others stepped back. He built a career on restraint, precision, and an unshakable sense of justice. But on a blistering Las Vegas afternoon, none of that mattered to the rookie who spotted him standing in his own driveway. What that rookie saw wasn't a veteran officer. What he thought he saw was a suspicious black man leaning on a nice SUV. The security camera above the garage captured what happened next. Every command shouted, every accusation, every unlawful touch. By the time the handcuffs clicked, the rookie believed he had made the biggest arrest of his life. He was wrong. Within the hour, the entire precinct would witness a career implode in real time, and 6 months later, a courtroom would decide his fate, 20 years behind bars. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. Sergeant Darnell Cross was 43 years old. He had spent 19 years as a police officer. For the last 7 of those years, he had held the rank of sergeant. He was not the kind of sergeant who yelled or used force unnecessarily. He was the kind who showed up early, stayed late, and mentored rookies into becoming better officers than he had been. He taught de-escalation courses at the academy. He had trained over 200 officers in techniques for managing tense situations without violence. His internal affairs file contained 0 complaints. Instead, it contained commendations, letters from citizens, thank you notes from officers he had guided. He was the kind of leader captains requested by name. He was the kind of mentor rookies asked for when they had problems. His reputation extended beyond the precinct. Community leaders knew him. Neighborhood associations asked him to speak. He had built a career on the principle that authority without restraint was tyranny. Power without responsibility was corruption, and the badge meant nothing if it wasn't used to protect everyone equally. On a Thursday afternoon in July, Darnell was standing in the driveway of his apartment complex. The heat was brutal, 111 degrees, the kind of Las Vegas summer where the pavement shimmers and breathing feels like inhaling from an oven. He was waiting for his wife to come downstairs. They had plans for dinner. Nothing extraordinary, just a normal afternoon before a normal evening. He was wearing casual clothes, jeans, a polo shirt. No badge, no gun visible. Just a man in his own driveway, leaning against his own vehicle, waiting. The apartment complex was upscale, 7 stories, glass exterior, premium parking spaces. The neighborhood was quiet. The landscaping was immaculate. This was the kind of place where people expected safety, where people expected authority to work in their favor.
Officer Marcus Webb was 23 years old. He had been on the force for 14 months. He was the kind of rookie who believed the badge granted him authority before it granted him responsibility. He was the kind of officer who escalated before he assessed. He was the kind of man who saw a black man in an upscale neighborhood and believed something was wrong. Webb's patrol car jumped the curb. The tires gripped asphalt. He parked diagonally across the sidewalk, blocking Darnell's SUV from behind. The position was aggressive. The intention was control. He stepped out with adrenaline flooding his system. His hand hovered near his taser. His chest was puffed. His posture communicated dominance before he had spoken a single word. "What are you doing out here?" Webb's voice was sharp, not curious, accusatory. "Standing in my driveway," Darnell said. His response was measured, respectful. He had been trained to de-escalate. He knew this was a problem situation. He knew that the wrong words could make it worse. Webb's eyes moved from Darnell's face to the apartment building behind him. He saw the luxury complex. He saw the parking lot. He saw a man who did not fit the neighborhood narrative he had constructed in his mind. "This is a gated community," Webb said. "Not a question, a challenge." "Yes," Darnell said. "I live here." Webb moved closer. His hand remained near his taser. The security camera mounted above the garage entrance captured everything: the angle, the distance, the aggression in Webb's posture. It captured what came next without distortion or ambiguity. "I need your identification," Webb said. "For what reason?" Darnell asked. He was asking the right question, the legal question, the question that should have caused Webb to articulate a basis, a reason, a cause.
Webb did not articulate anything. Instead, he issued a command. "Hands where I can see them." Darnell did not argue. He raised his hands. His palms were open. His movements were slow. He was demonstrating compliance. He was showing that he was not a threat. But compliance did not satisfy Webb. Compliance angered him. It suggested defiance. It suggested disrespect. "Turn around," Webb ordered. Darnell turned. The camera captured the movement, the moment where a sergeant complied with a command from a rookie officer who had no legal authority to issue it. "Don't talk," Webb said. Darnell had not been talking, but the command came anyway. It was designed to control, to establish dominance, to ensure that Darnell could not explain who he was. Webb grabbed Darnell's wrist, not to guide him, to control him. His grip was tight. His movement was aggressive. He spun Darnell toward the SUV. The metal was hot from the sun. The hood burned where Darnell's body made contact. Webb slammed him against the hood, not carefully, with force. The sound carried across the parking lot. Darnell's breath was forced from his lungs. "Stop resisting," Webb said. But Darnell was not resisting. The camera showed a man in a polo shirt being assaulted on his own property. The camera showed zero resistance, zero threat, zero justification. Webb pulled handcuffs from his belt. The metal gleamed in the sunlight. He applied them with force, too much force. The edges bit into skin. Darnell did not cry out. He did not struggle. But the camera captured the bruising that would appear hours later. Once the cuffs were tight, Darnell did something that changed everything. He looked directly at the security camera mounted above the garage. He knew it was there. He had lived in this complex for 4 years. He knew the security system. "Badge number 4782, he said, his voice steady despite the pain in his wrists. "Sergeant Darnell Cross, Metro Police Department, Southeast Division. My commanding officer is Captain James Rodriguez." The statement was not a plea. It was not a threat. It was documentation. It was Darnell placing the truth into the record before Webb could construct a false narrative. Webb heard it, but hearing it did not change Webb's behavior. Instead, Webb doubled down. "Stop talking," he said. "You're making this worse." Darnell said nothing more, but the camera had captured his words. The timestamp was embedded in the footage. The evidence was secured. Webb walked Darnell to the patrol car. The walk across the parking lot was observed by neighbors. A woman watering her plants watched. A man washing his car paused. They saw a black man in handcuffs being escorted by a young officer. They saw what Webb intended them to see, an arrest. They did not know they were witnessing a federal crime. Webb had not yet absorbed what Darnell had said, or he had absorbed it and was choosing to ignore it. Either way, he did what rookies do when they're uncertain. He radioed it in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7, Webb said, his voice carrying across the radio frequency. "I have a suspect in custody, male, possibly armed, resisting arrest." Darnell was not armed. The footage would confirm this. Darnell was not resisting. The footage would confirm this too, but the words were spoken. The lie was broadcast. And somewhere, in a building 3 miles away, Internal Affairs was listening. Not because they were monitoring Webb specifically, but because this particular apartment complex had security cameras hardwired into the IA monitoring system. Years earlier, a different corruption case had led to the installation. The system was designed to protect, to document, to ensure that truth could not be fabricated. Every second of what happened in that driveway was being recorded. Every word Webb spoke was being heard. Every accusation was being preserved.
Webb arrived at the precinct with Darnell in the back of the patrol car. The drive took 8 minutes. During those 8 minutes, Webb had convinced himself that he had made a legitimate arrest.
The radio chatter had validated him. No supervisor had questioned him. The system had not corrected him. Webb parked in the secure lot. He escorted Darnell from the vehicle. They walked toward the holding area. The precinct was active. Officers moving between stations, detectives reviewing files, support staff managing paperwork. Webb approached the front desk. The desk sergeant, a woman named Martinez with 17 years of experience, looked up. Her expression did not change, but it did change, subtly, almost imperceptibly. She saw Darnell's face. She recognized him. "Bring him in," Martinez said quietly. Her tone had shifted. It was no longer neutral. It carried something else: concern, recognition, alarm. A detective who had been reviewing files 2 stations away looked over. His posture froze. He stood. He walked toward the desk. He said something to Martinez that could not be heard from where Webb stood. Webb did not notice the shift in the room, or he noticed it and did not understand it. He was still operating in the mindset of arrest, still riding the adrenaline, still convinced of his correctness. Then Captain Rodriguez appeared. Rodriguez was Darnell's commanding officer. He was 51 years old. He had been in the department for 28 years. He had seen young officers make mistakes. He had seen young officers cause harm. He had never seen a young officer arrest his own sergeant. Rodriguez looked at Darnell. He looked at Webb. His face did not show anger. It showed something darker, a recognition of what had just occurred, the magnitude of it. "Uncuff him," Rodriguez said. "Captain, Webb began. "Uncuff him, now." Rodriguez watched as Webb fumbled with the keys. The handcuffs came free. Darnell rubbed his wrists. The marks from the metal edges were visible. "You're suspended," Webb said to Rodriguez, "effective immediately. Do not speak to anyone. Do not touch any evidence. Do not file any reports. Do you understand?" Webb nodded. The room had gone silent. Officers had stopped moving. The entire precinct was watching a career implode in real time. The internal affairs investigation did not take long. The footage was already in their hands. They had watched the entire incident unfold. They had heard every word. They had seen every contact. They had documented every violation. The reviewing officer was Sergeant Lisa Chen. She had been an IA for 6 years. She had sustained complaints against 17 officers. She did not play politics. She did not protect the blue line. She pursued truth. She compiled the findings without repetition. Unlawful stop with 0 articulable suspicion. Unlawful detention without cause. Assault while in restraints. False statements in radio communications. Tampering with evidence. Webb had attempted to edit his initial report, then abandoned the effort. 6 charges, each one documented, each one supported by footage. The prosecution's office reviewed the evidence and decided to file federal charges, not state charges, federal charges. Civil rights violations, kidnapping under the color of law. These were serious felonies with mandatory minimum sentences. Webb was arrested at his home. He was processed. He was assigned counsel. He was informed of his rights. The irony of a police officer being read his rights by other police officers seemed lost on him. Or perhaps it was not. Perhaps in that moment the reality was beginning to dawn. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution's case was simple because the evidence was overwhelming. They presented the security footage without commentary. They played the radio transmission. They presented testimony from Darnell about his experience. They presented testimony from Captain Rodriguez about what it meant for a sergeant to be unlawfully arrested. The defense had no coherent strategy. Webb's attorney argued that Webb had been responding to a report of suspicious activity, but there was no report. The defense argued that Webb's actions were consistent with protocol, but the protocol had been violated. The defense argued that Darnell had resisted, but the footage showed no resistance. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. They watched the footage again. They reviewed the radio transmission. They examined the timeline. There was no ambiguity. There was no reasonable doubt. Guilty on all counts. The judge who presided over the sentencing was Judge Patricia Hayes. She had been on the bench for 12 years. She had heard cases involving police misconduct before, but she had never sentenced a police officer for kidnapping another police officer. "You took an oath," Judge Hayes said, looking at Webb. "That oath was to protect and serve, to uphold the Constitution, to enforce the law with restraint and with respect for human dignity. You violated that oath in the most direct way possible. You kidnapped a man who spent his career teaching other officers how to do the job correctly. You assaulted him, you lied about him, and you did it all on camera, as though the truth did not matter. 20 years, federal prison, no parole eligibility for 10. Webb's family in the gallery collapsed. His mother wept. His attorney requested an appeal. It would be denied. Darnell returned to duty 3 weeks after the verdict. He did not make a public statement. He did not seek interviews. He simply returned to work. He returned to mentoring rookies. He returned to teaching de-escalation. He returned to being the sergeant his department needed. The rookie's name became a reference point in academy ethics training. Instructors showed the footage. Instructors explained what went wrong. Instructors emphasized the weight of authority and the responsibility that comes with it. The department instituted mandatory bias review and procedural certification. All officers had to recertify annually. All stops had to be documented and reviewed. The system slowly began to change. Darnell's final commendation came from a surprising source, the community. The neighborhood association that had watched him arrested in his own driveway held a gathering. Hundreds of residents attended. They thanked him for his service. They apologized for what had happened. They did not need to, but they did anyway. Justice was not served in this case. Justice was defended by the very man the system tried to break. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And if this story showed you something you didn't know before, hit subscribe, because these stories only have power when people actually see them.
Afternoon, I saw you getting out of that car.
Yes, and?
That vehicle doesn't match your looks.
So there's no crime? No warrant?
I don't need one. Hands against the car.
Maceo Kincaid, United States federal judge.
For 20 years, Judge Maceo Kincaid had been the man criminals feared, a federal judge who never bent, never wavered, and never let the guilty walk free. He'd put corrupt cops behind bars, dismantled human trafficking networks, and became known nationwide as one of the most incorruptible figures in American justice. But none of that mattered on the peaceful Saturday morning when his home security camera recorded a patrol officer marching up his driveway, accusing him and his wife of breaking into their own home. In front of his 2 children watching from the living room window, the officer demanded he prove he belonged there, grabbed his arm, and attempted to arrest him without a warrant. What happened next would end that officer's career, ignite a federal civil rights investigation, and ultimately send him to prison for 16 years. How does a defender of justice respond when injustice comes for him? And what will this officer do once he realizes, far too late, who he just illegally detained? Stay with me. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. The body cam footage begins without context, heavy breathing from the officer's microphone, adrenaline, tension, the sound of movement, the crunch of gravel underfoot. The pristine cul-de-sac appears peaceful behind the trembling video feed, birds chirping, wind rustling through oak and maple trees. The morning is beautiful, the neighborhood is quiet, no disturbance, no threat,
Just a quiet Saturday morning at 9:14 a.m. in an upscale suburb where nothing ever happens. Judge Maceo Kincaid stands protective in front of his wife, Dr. Zora Kincaid. They are both in casual attire, gray hoodies, comfortable pants. They have just returned home from a morning walk around the neighborhood. They have walked for 45 minutes. They have stopped at a local cafe. They have purchased coffee and breakfast items. They have enjoyed a peaceful, ordinary morning. Now they are home. They are holding a small canvas bag of groceries from the cafe. They are calm. Their posture is non-threatening. Their body language communicates normalcy, routine, the simple act of returning home. Officer Logan Marks storms up the driveway, hand near his holster. His body cam captures his aggression. His jaw is clenched. His eyes are narrowed. His hand moves to his belt. His breathing is audible through the microphone. The camera shakes with his movement. The tension is palpable. The raw dialogue is unfiltered, clipped, unprocessed, dangerous. Officer Marks: "Hands on the wall, now!" Judge Sterling: "This is our home. What is the alleged crime?"
I said, hands where I can see them. Don't make this difficult. The body cam shakes with the officer's movement. Elena looks terrified. Her hand reaches out toward her husband. Judge Sterling's face shows the calculation of someone who understands he is in danger. The moment freezes. Black screen. White text appears. For 20 years, Judge Maceo Kincaid had been the man criminals feared. He had sat on the federal bench and made decisions that sent violent offenders to prison. He had protected victims. He had upheld the Constitution. He had never wavered. He had never bent under pressure. He had never let the guilty walk free. During those 20 years, he had put corrupt cops behind bars. 13 of them. Officers who had abused their power, officers who had violated constitutional rights, officers who had believed they were above the law, officers who had assaulted suspects, officers who had planted evidence, officers who had falsified testimony, one narcotics detective who had created a pattern of illegal searches, one sheriff who had run an extortion ring, terrorizing small business owners, one corrections officer who had brutalized inmates behind prison walls. He had dismantled human trafficking networks that had operated for decades. He had ordered asset seizures. He had sentenced traffickers to 30 years, 40 years, some to life. He had supervised civil rights cases that had changed how the system operated. He had written opinions that were cited in law schools across the country. He had become known nationwide as one of the most incorruptible figures in American justice. Defense attorneys hated him because they knew his rulings would be fair, even when fairness meant their clients went to prison. Prosecutors respected him because they knew he would not allow them to cut corners. Criminals feared him because they understood his name meant accountability. The public knew his name. He was Judge Maceo Kincaid. He was the judge who never bent. But none of that mattered on the peaceful Saturday morning when his home security camera recorded a patrol officer marching up his driveway, accusing him and his wife of breaking into their own home. None of that protection mattered when he was standing in front of his house, keys in hand, facing someone with a badge and a gun who had decided, without evidence, without investigation, without any legal justification, that he did not belong. In front of his 2 children watching from the living room window, Maceo Jr., age 12, and Zora Jr., age 9, the officer demanded he prove he belonged there. He grabbed his arm. He twisted it. He attempted to arrest him without a warrant. He accused him of a crime that had never happened. What happened next would end that officer's career. What happened next would ignite a federal civil rights investigation. What happened next would send him to prison for 16 years. What happened next would expose a system that had protected him for 11 years despite multiple complaints.
How does a defender of justice respond when injustice comes for him? And what will this officer do once he realizes, far too late, who he just illegally detained? Stay with me. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded.
Judge David Sterling was born in 1972 in Baltimore, Maryland. His childhood had been defined by service and integrity. His mother, Margaret Sterling, had been a police dispatcher for 28 years. She had worked in the communications center of the Baltimore Police Department. She had answered emergency calls. She had heard crisis in real time. She had heard people at their most vulnerable. She had listened to robbery victims. She had listened to accident survivors. She had listened to families reporting missing children. In that work, she had understood how systems operated. She had understood the gaps in the system. She had understood how emergency response worked and how it sometimes failed. She had understood the difference between protocols and people. She had understood that the system was only as good as the people operating it. His father, Robert Sterling, had been a postal worker for 32 years. He had walked the same route in Baltimore for nearly 3 decades. He had known every neighborhood. He had known which streets were dangerous, which streets were safe. He had known the people on his route by name. He had treated every person with equal respect, regardless of their economic status or where they lived. He had been a symbol of consistency and fairness. They had raised David and his younger sister, Patricia, to believe deeply in fairness, accountability, and discipline. These were not abstract concepts in the Sterling household. They were lived values. David had grown up watching his mother navigate the police system, understanding its strengths and its failures. He had grown up watching his father treat every person on his route with equal respect, regardless of their situation. David had been an exceptional student, straight A's from elementary school through high school. He had been the mock trial captain in high school, leading his school to a state championship. He had been on the law review at the University of Maryland Law School. He had interned at the Federal Public Defender's Office, where he had learned about the system from the perspective of those defending people against it. He had been recruited directly into a federal prosecution program. At age 26, he had begun his career as an assistant U.S. attorney in the criminal division. His specialty had been organized crime and gang extortion cases. He had spent his first decade of practice building cases against gang leaders who used violence to control neighborhoods. He had testified in dangerous neighborhoods. He had worked with witnesses who were terrified of retaliation. He had built cases methodically, with precision. Throughout his prosecution career, he had always, without exception, protected civil rights during his investigations. He had always required that his agents follow constitutional procedures, even when those procedures slowed down investigations. He had always demanded that his cases be built on solid evidence, not shortcuts, not hearsay, not assumptions, not racial profiling. Evidence. At age 32, he had been selected as a judge, Federal District Court. The appointment had come from the president. It had been confirmed by the Senate with strong bipartisan support. Attorneys across the political spectrum had testified that he was fair, knowledgeable, and committed to the Constitution. He had taken the oath to uphold the Constitution. His record on the bench had been extraordinary. He had heard cases involving civil rights violations. He had heard cases involving police misconduct. He had always ruled fairly. He had never shown bias. He had never allowed personal considerations to affect his judgment, but he also had never been lenient on police officers who violated constitutional rights. He had understood that the badge did not exempt someone from the law. He had sentenced 13 corrupt police officers to federal prison. 13. one narcotics detective who had falsified evidence in 53 cases, resulting in wrongful convictions, one sheriff who had run an extortion ring, taking money from Hispanic-owned businesses in exchange for not arresting them on fabricated drug charges, one corrections officer who had brutalized inmates, breaking bones, causing permanent injuries, one patrol officer who had planted drugs on an innocent man and testified falsely at trial, 13 officers who believed the badge made them untouchable, 13 officers who learned in Judge Sterling's courtroom that the law applied to everyone, 13 officers who went to federal prison, 13 officers whose careers ended, 13 families whose lives changed forever because Judge Sterling did his job. He had married Dr. Elena Sterling at age 35. Elena was a trauma surgeon. She had trained at Johns Hopkins. She worked at a major teaching hospital. She worked 12-hour shifts. She treated gunshot wounds. She treated stab wounds. She treated car accident victims. She saved lives. She had spent her career in emergency medicine at the highest level, responding to crises, fixing broken bodies, fighting against death. Together, Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling had hosted free legal rights workshops for underserved communities. Together, they had taught people about their constitutional rights. Together, they had worked to make the system more just. Together, they believed in fairness and accountability. They had 2 children, David Sterling Jr., age 12, Sarah Sterling, age 9. They had been raised to understand that the law was important, that fairness mattered, that following the rules was the foundation of everything. They had been taught to respect authority when authority was just. They had been taught to question authority when authority was unjust. They had been taught to speak up. On Saturday morning, October 14th at 9 a.m., Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling had gone for a morning walk. It was a habit they maintained together when both were home. They walked through their neighborhood. They talked about their week. They discussed their children's school. They discussed work. They enjoyed the physical activity and the time together. At 9:05 a.m., they had stopped at a local cafe near their home. They had purchased coffee and breakfast items. They had stood in line. They had paid. They had chatted briefly with the barista, a young woman who worked weekends. They had enjoyed a peaceful morning. No incident, no problems, just 2 professionals taking time for themselves before returning to their routine weekend responsibilities. They had returned to their car at 9:08 a.m. They had driven home. The drive was 5 minutes. They had arrived home at 9:13 a.m. They had parked their car in the driveway. They had exited the vehicle. They were holding groceries. They had their keys. They were about to enter their home.
Gloria Whitford lived 3 doors down from Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling. Gloria was 61 years old. She had lived in the neighborhood for 9 years. She was retired from her position as a human resources director. She spent a lot of time at home. She spent a lot of time looking out her windows, observing the neighborhood, maintaining a sense of order. She considered herself the unofficial guardian of the neighborhood. Gloria knew most of the people who lived on the street. She knew their schedules. She knew their routines. She knew when their children came home from school. She knew when their cars were different. She watched. She observed. She maintained vigilance. She did not consciously think of herself as biased. She did not consciously think of herself as someone who saw race, but she did. Her observations were filtered through unconscious bias. Her assessments were shaped by assumptions. Her sense of what belonged and what did not belong was influenced by her own identity and experiences. At 9:08 a.m., Gloria had been looking out her window. She had seen Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling walking up the street. They were in hoodies. The hoodies were gray. The day was not particularly cold. It was autumn, but mild. But hoodies were normal attire. They were walking together. They were carrying a bag of groceries from the local cafe. But Gloria had made a decision.
She had decided that the couple did not look like they belonged in the neighborhood. They were black. They were in casual attire. They were carrying groceries, not returning from work in professional clothing. They did not fit Gloria's mental image of who belonged in this neighborhood. Gloria had picked up her phone. She had called 911. She had reported suspicious persons. She had reported that a black couple in hoodies appeared to be attempting entry into one of the homes. She had reported that they looked out of place. She had reported that they might be casing homes for burglary. She had given the address. The 911 call was recorded. The transcription would later show that Gloria had never actually observed them attempting to break into anything. She had seen them walking. She had seen them entering their own driveway. She had seen them retrieving keys, but she had reported them as suspicious persons attempting entry. She did not know she had just triggered a disaster. The dispatch operator, Maria Gonzalez, age 28, had noted the call. Gonzalez had been working 911 dispatch for 4 years. She had answered thousands of calls. She had heard many reports of suspicious activity. Some were legitimate. Some were based on bias. She had no way to know which was which. Gonzalez had typed the report into the system. Possible suspicious activity. Possible attempted burglary. The address was provided. The description was provided. Black couple, hoodies, carrying bags, possibly attempting entry. The dispatch operator had sent the call out as a low-priority report. It was not an emergency. No one was being hurt. No weapon had been seen. Just a report of possible suspicious activity. The dispatch system assigned it to a patrol officer who was in the area. Officer Logan Marks, age 34, had received the call at 9:10 a.m. Officer Marks had been on patrol in the area. He had been conducting a routine patrol, no emergency calls, no high-priority incidents. He had been driving, watching the streets, waiting for something to happen. He had received the dispatch call, possible suspicious persons, possibly attempting entry, hoodies, black couple, area of address. Officer Marks had replied, "On my way, I'll handle it." His tone had been eager, too eager, the kind of eagerness that suggested he was looking for an encounter, the kind of eagerness that suggested he was hoping for something to happen, something that would break up the monotony of routine patrol, something that would give him a chance to exercise authority. Officer Marks had been on the police force for 11 years. During those 11 years, he had accumulated a substantial complaint record: 7 excessive force complaints, 3 racial profiling accusations, reports from residents, from community organizations, documenting a pattern of stops that targeted black individuals, 1 sustained incident of unlawful stop, where internal affairs had concluded that he had stopped someone without legal justification. 1 sustained finding. That meant that despite multiple complaints, internal affairs had only formally sustained 1 incident. 1. Despite 7 excessive force complaints, only 1 had been sustained. Despite 3 racial profiling accusations, none had been formally sustained. The internal review process at his department was not rigorous. Complaints were investigated by other officers. Decisions were made behind closed doors. No transparency, no public accountability, no consequences. Officer Marks had learned over 11 years that he could operate without fear of consequences. He had learned that the department would protect him. He had learned that even if a complaint was sustained, the discipline was minimal. He had learned that he could escalate encounters without fear of professional repercussions. He had learned that the badge protected him. At 9:12 a.m., Officer Marks had turned onto the street where Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling lived. He had spotted the vehicle in the driveway. He had spotted the 2 people standing on the driveway holding groceries near the front door. At 9:13 a.m., Officer Marks had parked his patrol vehicle diagonally across the Sterling's driveway, blocking their car. The movement had been aggressive. The positioning had been threatening. He had parked in a way that prevented them from easily leaving. He had parked in a way that communicated authority, dominance, control. He had exited his vehicle. He had not called for backup. He had not waited for additional officers. He had approached alone. He had approached with escalation already built into his plan.
The Bodycam footage shows Officer Marks marching up the driveway. The POV shakes with adrenaline. His breathing is heavy. His hand is near his holster. He has decided, before he has any information, before he has observed any crime, before he has spoken to anyone, that this is a threat situation. He has decided that these people are dangerous. Judge Sterling and Dr. Sterling are holding groceries. They are calm. They have just unlocked their front door. They are about to enter their home. They are not running. They are not hiding. They are simply existing in their own space. Officer Marks approaches rapidly. Officer Marks, you live here? The question is accusatory. It is not a genuine inquiry. It is a challenge. It is a statement that he does not believe they live here. Judge Sterling, yes, this is my home. I have the keys. I have the garage door opener. We just returned from a walk. He is remaining absolutely calm. He is not showing fear. He is not showing anger. He is explaining the situation. He is understanding in this moment that he is being profiled. He is understanding that his appearance has triggered this encounter. He is understanding that his black face in a gray hoodie in an upscale neighborhood has been reported as suspicious. Officer Marks, identification now. The command is sharp. There is no politeness. There is no, may I see your ID? There is only demand. Judge Sterling, for what reason are you requesting identification? What is the alleged crime? I am on my own property. I have committed no crime. Officer Marks does not answer. He is not interested in legal justification. He is interested in asserting authority. He is interested in establishing dominance. Dr. Elena Sterling, we literally just got out of our own car. We have groceries from the cafe down the street. You can see the receipt. Can you please stop yelling? Her voice is trembling slightly. She is frightened. She has seen her husband being confronted. She is a trauma surgeon. She has seen violence. She recognizes the escalation pattern. Officer Marks snaps, "Ma'am, stay quiet unless spoken to." The command is inappropriate. Elena has a right to speak. She is being detained on her own property. She has a right to advocate for herself. Judge Sterling, officer, you are unlawfully detaining us. You have no probable cause. You have no reasonable suspicion. I am asking you to explain the legal basis for this encounter. Officer Marks steps forward. His hand moves from his belt. He reaches out. He grabs Judge Sterling's wrist, twisting it behind his back. The Bodycam captures the action, the moment where a police officer assaults a federal judge because he asked about the legal basis for his detention. Officer Marks, hands behind your head. Turn around now. His voice is loud. His commands are sharp. His movements are aggressive. Dr. Elena screams. Her voice is terrified. She drops the bag of groceries. The bag breaks. Coffee spills. Breakfast items scatter across the driveway. She is watching her husband being assaulted. Judge Sterling's voice remains steady. He is experiencing pain. His wrist is twisted. His arm is pulled, but his voice does not show it. He understands he is being recorded. He understands this moment will have consequences. He speaks to the camera. For the record, I am being detained without probable cause, without a warrant, on my property by Officer Logan Marks, badge number. This encounter is being recorded. Officer Marks slams Judge Sterling onto the hood of his own car. The metal hood dents slightly under the impact. Judge Sterling's face is pressed against the hood. His breath is forced out of him. His body is in pain. The home security camera captures everything from a different angle. The camera positioned above the front door captures the assault. The front window of the home frames the scene. Inside the home, David Jr. and Sarah watch from the living room window.
They see their father being assaulted. They are terrified. David Jr., age 12, is old enough to understand what is happening. He is old enough to recognize that his father is being attacked without cause. He is old enough to feel the injustice of it. He is old enough to be traumatized by it. Sarah, age 9, does not fully understand. She only understands that her father is being hurt. She only understands that a man with a gun is hurting her father. She only understands fear. Dr. Elena fights through her fear. She is a trauma surgeon. She has been trained to remain calm under crisis. She has treated victims of violence. She understands what is happening. She understands that she needs to help her husband. Check his jacket pocket, please. Check his jacket pocket. He's a federal judge. She is communicating the only information that might matter to this officer. Not that he is a good person, not that he has committed no crime, but that he has institutional authority, that he has a badge of his own. Officer Marks pauses, annoyed. He wants to continue, but he reaches into Judge Sterling's breast pocket anyway. His hand emerges with a federal judicial ID. The gold seal is visible from the body cam footage. The photograph is visible. Federal Judge David Sterling, United States District Court. Silence. Officer Marks's hands begin trembling. The body cam captures it. His body language shifts. His breathing spikes. His face goes pale. Oh, shit. He releases Judge Sterling. He steps back. He understands in that moment what he has done. He has assaulted a federal judge. He has committed a federal crime. He has done it on camera. He has done it at the judge's home. He has done it in front of the judge's children. Judge Sterling straightens up. His wrist is red. His face is flushed from being pressed against the car hood, but his voice remains steady. He is documenting this. This was an unlawful stop. This was an unlawful detention. This was an assault. Officer Marks provides his information. He provides his badge number, his department, his shift supervisor.